Right, good morning. Back at the same permission that I was at last week. In other words, the permission which is not too far from the Battle of Hastings site, 1066, upon which an abbey was built 7 years after the event. Now, according to what I've read, in 1066 the abbey, or let's say when the abbey was constructed, the king, William the Conqueror, gave the lands around the abbey up to 1 league, one Roman, this is Latin I think, a word meaning 1.5 miles. A league in modern day English means 3 miles, and then there's a nautical version that also pertains to 3 miles, but back in the 11th century, a league basically pertained to 1.5 miles. So they were given all the lands around the abbey up to 1.5 miles, and I'm slightly outside of that zone here, but it's interesting nevertheless. Now, the Malfosse, which there are 6 contending likely sites at the moment, and researchers can't make a conclusion as to which ditch the Malfosse was, but it may in fact have been a fortification, because a fosse in Old English, although it's originally a Latin word, often pertains to a defensive ditch. Now, references to that I've found, and I'm sure other people have too, in the Records Office in 13th century charters for the abbey, which mention the place, and they mention it in connection with land exchanges that people were making with the monks, and a couple of them pertain to a place called Birchett's Wood. Now, I found, going through the records, the catalogue for the Records Office for East Sussex, that there's a Birchett Wood, or there was a Birchett Wood in the relevant period, somewhere near to Coldbeck Hill, and I know that because Coldbeck Croft is in the description. So there was a place called Coldbeck Croft and Birchett's Wood. Now, I can't say for certain that the Malfosse is therefore close to Birchett's, but I need to look at the land exchanges and see if they're sort of neighbourly land exchanges, which means that land being exchanged between the priory and the local people in sort of a small locality, or whether their land exchanges crossing several miles, in which case Birchett's Wood won't really give us a reference. But as the mentions of the Malfosse seem to be connected to Birchett's Wood, it suggests that the ditch was somewhere near Coldbeck Hill, which is not where I am today. But we have the vain hope that possibly there reckoned to be something like 6,000 men on each side. When the English were fleeing northwards, they would have gone into the nearest bits of woodland in order to conceal themselves, and into some of these gills, these deep ravines that we have in the woods. So I'm basically detecting in this area with the vain hope of possibly coming across something interesting anyway. So we'll just get on, because we're going to be very limited for time. The time is actually 1:24. Right, I'm going to head over to that spot where I was when it was getting dark in my last video. I found an odd-shaped piece of iron that looked very old, but no idea what it was. This is a point of reference, because it's quite difficult to navigate through here. True. Right, I found that spot where I last hole on the last video. I found the iron, and it's whether or not I want to dig. Can't get a clear centre on it. Hear the iron there. It's spread over quite an area. Well, anyway, here's a bit more of that iron object, whatever it's going to be. small bits of iron. It might just be sort of bits that have fallen off the larger piece that I pulled out. So it could be natural iron that we're looking at here. Unfortunately I'm going to have to abort, I think, because it's consuming too much time, but if you have a listen. See, that clod there is saying that there's iron in there. So it's giving an iron signal. You break it apart. And there's nothing there. Same with this one. So it must be ferrous material in the soil that's leached into the soil, possibly from that object that I found last week or whenever it was in my last video, but there's nothing, no material object within the clod, so I think I'm going to have to crack on. Let's go over it one more time. Either it's something that's rotted so much, or it's natural, one or the other, but we're going to have to press on. 13 or 15, 50%. Right, it's in this ball of earth, but that's mulch, so it's probably going to be a shotty. Yeah, it's a good signal, but it's not a deep one. There it is. What on earth is that? Tiny bit of aluminium. Right, we'll move on. Right, I have 11. Hope that's not another piece of aluminium. Right, where are you? Something tiny, I suspect. It's a shotty. Shotgun cartridge end. Alright, target number 3, I think it is. That's something quite large. It's max depth 22. Sadly, just a fleck of aluminium. Another blob of aluminium off a bonfire or something, I suspect. So a lot of roots in this area, proving very difficult. This was a 23-24. It's very shallow again. At least it's a buckle. It's like a Second World War era buckle. Right, not found anything from the Second World War in this wood yet, but it looks something along those lines. Right, this is a 12. You can see it's quite shallow. Difficulty with the digging is the roots around here, so might move to a different spot in a moment. Thought it was there. Nope, I'm off centre, obviously. Signal's deteriorating. think that's something quite small. 13, probably part of a shotty. I don't know if Minelab made 13 on the scale, the most predominant shotty number, intentionally, but they do come up all over the scale, unfortunately, but this is clearly something quite small. Right, well, it had obviously fallen back into the hole because I've just scooped the hole out, which is why it went off the radar. He says. Shotty percussion. After all that, centrepiece of a shotty end. On the surface, a 26 on the scale. Indications of military presence. I think is a 50 or 20mm. And maybe from an aircraft, of course, but a bit of World War II machine gun cartridge there. I think that's a 20mm cannon shell. Right, another high number. 26 again. And 50%, so probably another anti-aircraft cartridge. Yeah, it wasn't very deep, that's for sure. No, that's not out. Wait 1 minute. Thought it was out of the hole. Unless it's a cartwheel penny. Chance would be a fine thing. It's a nice signal, but high number. Something conductive. A bit deeper. Yeah, I'm reckoning it's going to be a machine gun cartridge, but we shall see. Oh, maybe not. What's it going to be? Seems to be in here. So 26. Probably something circular. So it doesn't look like it's an ammo cartridge. Ooh, look at that. Oh, it's a badge. It's a military badge. I thought it was a hammer coin for a minute. Interesting though. What's that made of? Right, so we know which regiment was in this wood, possibly. Is that silver? It's probably silver plated, to be fair. Right, hang on. Give it a quick clean. Right, well, although it's modern, it's interesting nevertheless. It says Rye Grammar School. So I don't know how old that is, but it's not got much age to it, but maybe 1900s, but it's a Rye Grammar School motif badge. Right, another surface find. 31 in fact. It's a nice horse brass again. It's the second one I found on this site. Don't know, might have something on there. Victorian horse brasses. Yeah, we've got some initials on there. We have it's like GA. I think that's GA. Yeah, hard to tell. It's either GA or I would imagine that's a G, because a B, it wouldn't be a lowercase b and an uppercase A. So who are you? 150 years ago, GA, I think. Right, it's quite thick with roots, the ground here, so I didn't expect, it was quite a broken signal, so 16 I think it was, or was it 6? I'll tell you. Yeah, it was 16, and I think we got a coin, first coin of the day. I think it's probably just a modern half penny. It's quite corroded, unfortunately. I don't think it may be Georgian. Let's have a spray. Right, giving it a good clean, nothing discernible though. That's going to be Georgian or Victorian, I would say. Half penny. Right, nice high number again, not terribly deep. I think we have ourselves a penny. Or it may even be a Georgian penny. 26. Signs of activity around here. It takes me an hour or two to get into the sort of process of detecting. I've always found that the first hour you just find that I'm not really getting into a rhythm. But see who this one is. Having a bit of sun coming out, which is a miracle. Now that is actually, I think, that's George III penny. They say the soils here are quite acid, but actually it's just a sort of brown coating. And that's actually better than some of the fields I do nearer to where I live. I don't know if there's a way of just removing that tannic acid, I think it is, from in the woods. But no, nice. About 1800, that one. It's I think that's a penny. Right, I don't know if you can see any clearer. I'll post a picture up at the end, but that's looking right. It's a George III. As I say, it's sort of circa 1800. Right, I'm moving over to a different part of the wood now. It's a lot drier than it was on that last detect that I did, because it had been raining for about a week before that one. But we're just going to go into this area now, and then find the next gill in the terrain, go around that. This one was an 18. You see the roots that you're cutting through, which makes it quite arduous. It's quite a pingy 18. Could be a shotty, or it might be something copper. Gold would be good, because a piece of gold coin I found once was 18. Very much doubt that. It's a shotty, unfortunately. Damn things, they come up all over the scale. Right, I'm at that point where I ended the video last time because it was getting dark. Time is now overlooking a deep gill, 3:11. So I haven't got an awful long time, but I'm just going to go around the edge of this to get the idea. You can see, possibly see, it's a kind of deep pit, so worth investigating the edges of this. You can see it's waterlogged, and the source of the spring is fairly close to here somewhere, and then it runs basically in a southerly direction down there. So we're just going to run around the edge of this and see if we can't find anything. If you're attempting to walk across it, as you probably saw last time, it was quite treacherous. There's that tree with the hollow centre. Is that a track, or is that a natural feature running into the great pit that we have in front of us there? We'll detect it and see what we can find. Crossing the gill a little bit downstream, for obvious reasons that it's not as broad. You can see the iron in the water here. See quite how muddy it is. Well, it looks like to me that the area has been detected on those banks, the obvious places. So there's the iron in the water. So we'll try and do some slightly less accessible bits on this side. That's the plan anyway. Passing by this great pit that I described as a piece of worked masonry stone there. About 1.5 feet by 3/4. Right, I found a target, but it's so close to the surface. It's a 21. I'm not holding out much hope. Expecting it to be a shotty. It's a pound coin. It's one of the older ones, I think. I think you can change these up at the bank anyway. As I'm in the bottom of this gill, just downstream from that huge pit, I decided to dig an iron signal, which ordinarily I wouldn't do, but it's pretty deep, as you can see. And it's clearly a point where, well, I don't know if you can see, but I've got this horseshoe down from probably 2 feet down. Now, I don't know if that's got great age to it. It's very thick, so it's not a Victorian type. That's interesting. I've not seen a type like that. See, get an idea of the thickness from there. But in plan view, it's quite thin too. So that's an interesting horseshoe. Right, it has got dark, folks. So I'm going to make my way back to my bicycle. Come on a bicycle today. The time is, the clock is set right today, 4:48. Right, a quick roundup. Only 15 targets were dug, mainly because I started a little bit late in the day on Sunday. So starting with this Victorian horse brass, it says GA, and that's a type of lettering called monograph, yeah, pertains to the owner of the horse, I assume. A wartime buckle. These are typically in connection with where I found them before has been in connection with some sort of wartime, Second World War or First World War military activity. This is in fact a 20mm anti-aircraft machine gun round, either dropped out of an aircraft or fired from a ground gun. And we have 2 Georgian coins. One is worse for wear, the smaller one is a halfpenny or halfpenny, and the other one, as I stated in the video, is a George III. You can just about see him looking right, and you can just about see Britannia, an outline of Britannia there somewhere, sitting facing left. The other one, unfortunately, is worn out. There's an old pound coin. Don't know when that's from, early 2000s. It's probably late sort of 90s, early 2000s sort of date. And the horseshoe, which I'd thought was old, because it was a foot and a half down. I've looked into horseshoes. Now, the earlier ones tend to be much flatter and broader than this. So this part, measured at a point about 3/4 of the way round, is called the web. And they had broader webs generally than medieval horseshoes. This one, because it's got toe clips, these things here, it's more likely to be Victorian or later. So the earlier horseshoes tended to be thinner. This is very thick. You can see how thick it is at that end. And as I say, it's got toe clips, so it's likely to be Victorian or later. The other thing about horseshoes is that the very early ones tend to have nails that, well, the medieval horseshoes have nails that protrude, and then after 1700 they were set into a groove, which probably this one had, called a fuller, but it's so rusty that basically the groove where the nails sat can no longer be seen. There tend to be, this is tendencies, I say the word tend to, the more recent ones tend to, or let's say post-medieval, so 1700 onwards, tend to have more nail holes. The very early ones have about 6, and they have huge heads on the nails that protrude. And you see that there's a colkin, it's called a colkin, and it gave grip to the horse when moving across slippery ground. And colkins actually go right back to I think at least Norman, if not pre 1066 examples. Oh yes, the Norman horseshoes, so they were broader, very thin or flatter in that axis, and had protruding nails. And the earliest examples, including the Anglo-Saxon, had a wavy outside edge, which is caused by driving. So the blacksmith would have made holes for the 6 nails, or 6 or 8 nails, more likely to be 6 on the earlier ones, and they were heavily countersunk, and so the holes were tapered, and that caused the edge of the shoe to waver. If you ever find one that's got a wavy edge like that, then it's likely to be at least Norman. And then this badge, so Rye Grammar School, seems to have a silver hallmark on it just there where my thumb is, so it's felt a bit light to be silver, but it might be a low grade of silver. It turns out, a little bit of research, these were issued by the Rye Grammar School in the 1920s and 30s, and there was someone with the same name who was the head teacher there as the owner of the wood up until 1970. So the wood was sold by a local family who owned the pub in the late 1700s at a place called Who, which isn't far off from Battle, and they were originally involved in the likes of smuggling and later on coal merchants, and it's possible that there's a connection there between the owner of the wood and the head teacher who was at Rye Grammar School in the 20s and 30s. So that appears to be made of silver. And then an odd-shaped piece of iron. I don't know what these things are. A bit like the piece I found last time, and 3 shotties and some bits of detritus, unfortunately. But there we go. Need to start a bit earlier next time. But the sun's come out, and we have the advent of the new year tonight. So starting the new year in a more sunnier climes for once. So one last thing for me to do is to wish everybody a very happy new year. I hope you all had a great Christmas, and happy hunting wherever you are, and And thank you very much for the interest you've taken in my small video productions that I've made in 2025.